When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Aloe or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling, and for shoppers, buying, simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does online business better than Shopify. It's home of Shop Pay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/income.
Hi everyone, I'm Deb Flashenberg. Welcome to Yoga, Birth, Babies, a podcast produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. We will be diving into everything prenatal yoga, birth, and baby related, hoping to inspire, educate, and empower you through your journey into motherhood. Thank you for listening.
Hi, I'm Deb Flashenberg, and I'm your host of Yoga, Birth, Babies. And today we're going to talk about nervous system regulation in the context of parenting. So you might have noticed, yes, I have actually done several podcasts on this topic because not long ago, the former Surgeon General actually put a warning out about parental stress. And it's something that I really related to. And I have wanted to dive into this topic of understanding the stress we feel as parents, how that affects our ability to parent. And so, yes, I have done a fair amount of podcasts. I'm always looking for a different perspective and diving deeper in. So in today's podcast, we're looking at a framework called the Domains of Family Wellness. And there's 9 areas that our guest talks about that helps parents assess and optimize themselves to best show up, keeping their nervous system quiet and regulated, and to help support and parent their children. It's really exciting to me because we can really start to pinpoint the root of stress in family life and talk about ways to help support and treat these symptoms. So to have this conversation, I have Kat Sabath. She is a therapist, coach, and yoga teacher who helps parents find deep fulfillment in family life. She's the founder of The Family Well, where she combines evidence-based mental health strategies with holistic tools like breathwork and mindfulness to help caregivers in the trenches of parenthood find themselves again, improve their partnerships, and enjoy life with their kids. So I think you're going to get a lot out of this conversation. We're going to go into some of the biggest misconceptions you hear about emotional regulation and stress management for parents, and we're going to give practical tips and information so that you, as a soon-to-be or a current parent, feel support and find ways through what can sometimes be a stressful time of life. Now, before we get to my conversation with Kat, I always love to give you some updates about what's happening at Prenatal Yoga Center. So our most current teaching schedule you can find on our website at prenatalyogacenter.com. You'll find if we have vacations or holidays, sometimes we close or just do a re-release, all that's on our website. We also constantly are adding new workshops, and once a month we have pretty much our normal workshops. So I think we have like 6 or 7 workshops a month. So you can find that on our website as well. And then we have our on-demand workshops. We also have my huge library of blogs and podcasts, like I'd say almost 20 years of blogs out there. And I think the podcast is 8 or 9 years old. So there's over 400 episodes. All that can also be found on our website. And then I've been hearing a lot of folks saying they're finding our prenatal yoga teacher training through this podcast, which is really exciting. So we have a very intense, it runs for 3 months. It's 2 intense weekends together and a lot of homework. We have a really full prenatal yoga teacher training. So if this methodology is intriguing to you and you want to bring this to community, also check that out on our website. We've also heard back from a lot of community listeners about wanting to be on the podcast, which is really exciting. So if you have a birth story to share, or maybe you're a birth worker and you want to talk about your work, again, head to our website to fill out an application. All right, I think that's enough from me. I'm really excited for you to hear this conversation with Kat Sabath. So we're going to take a super quick break. When we come back, please enjoy.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
Hi, Kat. How are you?
Hi, Deb. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for coming on. I'm excited to talk about, I've done so many podcasts about the nervous system and parenting because my husband's like, really another? I'm like, yes, another, because I think it's actually really important and something we don't talk about enough. So I'm excited to jump into that. But before I do, I'd love if you can tell me a little bit about your background and what led you to focusing on the nervous system regulation and parenting.
Sure, of course. So I actually started out as an elementary school teacher. I used to teach third grade and then fifth grade, and I loved teaching. But I kind of found that no matter what school context I was in, no matter where I was, that there was a common thread, which is that all these caregivers were really trying to do the best they could for their kids. And for lots of different reasons, they often were struggling to do that, right? Maybe it was financial barriers or systemic. Maybe they had mental health issues or work stress or relationship stress, right? There were just so many factors impacting parenting.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to feel that I just really wanted to get out of the classroom and work with families in more of a home environment. So I took a year off after I taught. The last year I taught was COVID. And so I finished the year out online, and I took a year to do some reflection, trying to figure out my direction. And in the meantime, I did my yoga teacher training. And I had been doing yoga for a long time for my own mental health, but the dots just kind of connected with that of like regulating the whole body, leading to, decreased stress, more emotional regulation. And then, of course, I had my own daughter in 2022. So right before I started my master's program in social work, and kind of learned how hard parenting actually was firsthand.
Yeah.
I had been seeing kids, in the classroom and had an idea of what it was like, but, nothing really tells you what parenting is like until you're doing it yourself. And so I had studied social work. I had focused on advanced clinical practice, and all of my background in kind of childhood development, as well as yoga, and then my clinical practice kind of connected together of, parents need to actually take care of themselves and reduce their stress and actually regulate their whole bodies in order to parent from a place of health and wholeness.
That is fascinating. I love that you have that combination of school teacher, parenting, yoga teacher, and then topping that off with the, I think you have an LMSW, correct?
Yep,
Licensed master.
that's correct.
Amazing. Yeah, I love clinicals. I'm a little biased. My husband's an LCSW, so I'm
I didn't know that.
biased to therapists. I'm like, hey, they do such, especially social workers. So I love that you have that, all of that combination to really support your work. So I know you've worked in trauma treatment before. How has that shaped your approach to supporting parents today?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's interesting because when I was doing it, I didn't really know how much it would. I worked in a residential trauma treatment facility for folks who had really severe trauma, often beginning in childhood, often ongoing. And these folks were really struggling to function in their day-to-day lives. And when I was doing this work, I was really focused on gaining all these clinical skills that I knew I would need to work in the therapy space. But then as I continued to work with this population, it was really apparent to me that they were working on symptom stabilization, right? Just getting to the point where they weren't feeling so awful all the time. And they would stay about 6 to 12 weeks. And the number one thing that we would work on is helping them kind of ground and orient in the present moment and know that they were actually safe and they weren't in kind of trauma times anymore, right? Their body was actually physically safe. And through working with them, they made so much progress. And lots of them had been to lots of different kinds of therapy before. They had tried EMDR, they have tried CBT, all these different things that are supposed to work, right? And they do work and they're evidence-based. But for these people that I was working with, the thing that made the hugest difference was their bodies actually learning to feel safe. And I kind of started to apply some of the skills, right? Because I think, everybody to some extent has some, I would say, like lowercase t trauma, right? Not everybody has unimaginable traumas in their life, and trauma affects everyone differently. And it's always defined according to an individual. But everybody faces difficult things in their life that essentially gets us stuck in like this fight or flight mode. And so to have the idea of like, okay, I don't have to have had some severe trauma that threatened my life in order to benefit from teaching myself that I'm actually safe and showing my body that my physical body is safe here in the present. That was really powerful because I realized that that applies to everybody. So I started practicing some of those skills that we were teaching in the hospital myself. I found that they were really regulating to me. I was parenting my 2-year-old. I was pregnant with my now 1-year-old at the time. And so I was stressed out and I was also in grad school. And so I started practicing some of these skills and found that they really were impacting me positively, and then started using them with clients that, weren't just in the hospital program, but also cross context. And I've seen them be really beneficial for parents.
Do you have a particular one that either you responded to or you noticed your clients resonated with?
That's such a good question. I think the simplest one, and it sounds kind of cheesy, but it really does work, is just grounding and orienting. So essentially what that means is like reminding yourself where you are and that you're safe. So if you find yourself maybe, let's see, this has happened to me recently. Like my 3-year-old is crying for something. She's upset. And my 1-year-old is like needing a diaper change. And I'm working on doing both of those things. And I'm just finding myself getting like frazzled, right? It's hot. I'm like, can't meet everybody's needs at the same time. To just kind of feel my feet on the ground. Like I'm standing right here, right? My baby is here. Okay, it's very loud. I am safe. Very loud, but I'm still safe, right? Just kind of talking myself through, like, it's sunny outside. It's June 24th. I am here and I am safe, right? Just reminding your body that you're not actually in like a fight for your life, because that's actually what our brain does when we're super stressed out. It kind of sends us, and we can talk a little bit more about this in detail, but when our nervous system kind of gets out of whack, when it activates, it's a protective mechanism to be safe, like if we're running from a tiger or something. And I know we talk about this also, maybe I've even heard it on your podcast before, like in birth, we kind of have these reactions of like birth's going to stall if we are feeling like we're in fight or flight, like we can't be safe, right? So it's the same kind of idea of just reminding yourself, grounding, orienting. You can use your 5 senses, like I like to name 5 blue things in the room, or what am I seeing? What am I smelling? What am I feeling? Right? Going through different senses to kind of help you be present in the physical space.
I love that you said that. I used some of that with myself. I used to be a performer, and when I'd go in for auditions, and sometimes it was very much my head and nervous, I felt like I was literally a floating head and I did not feel connected to my body. So one of the tools that my teachers taught me at the conservatory was like you said, feel your feet on the floor, really feel that grounding weight. And then with my son, who gets dysregulated sometimes, I go into the name things in the room to like kind of bring him out of that. I think of it like a mosh pit in his brain. Like instead of being in that dissonant, come back to where you are and organizing. And it actually really helps. So, I love that you mentioned that. So for those that are new to this concept, what does nervous system regulation actually mean? Because I feel like we say that a lot, and I think it's become a little bit of a buzzword, but I feel like people are like, what is that? And especially in the context of parenting.
Yes, I think that's a really great point. It is one of these buzzwords these days, and people often don't know what it entails. And so essentially our nervous system is our brain, our spinal cord, our nerves. That's our control center. It sends messages. And then we have our autonomic nervous system and our parasympathetic nervous system. So the autonomic nervous system controls that fight or flight that a lot of people have heard about. And then the parasympathetic is rest and digest, like actually, things that are happening really behind the scenes. And they're all important. And so when I talk about regulating the nervous system, I mean really getting your body to a place where physically your emotions are not running the show. So for example, if you're like feeling really overwhelmed because you've got 20 things to do today, or because your birth is coming up, right? And maybe you're really nervous about that. You might start to feel physical sensations of that emotion. A lot of the clients I work with talk about feeling like jittery in their chest, or even like their hands are shaking or their head is buzzing, right? These kind of like physical sensations. And so that's evidence that your nervous system is moving into this fight or flight of like, oh my God, I'm not safe. What can I do? Right. I don't have anything to do with this, because in the past, if we were being chased by a tiger, or even in the present, right? If we're like in a burning building and we need to get out, it's helpful for us to feel that jittery feeling because we got to run out of there. So that really, it puts into action all the physical functions that allow us to like get ourselves on the move and get ourselves out. But in our day to day, we don't need to run away. We don't need to get out. We just need to figure out how to cope right in the moment. And so you're regulating your nervous system so that when you start to feel those emotions making physical sensations happen, you're able to notice it and maybe calm them down, right? Maybe you'll start to notice you're having emotions without having the physical sensations accompanied. That would be a really strong regulation. And then it's also, sometimes people notice the physical sensations before they even notice the emotions, right? So they're just having these, like, I don't know what's going on, but I just feel overwhelmed all the time. Or I'm sort of like, it's all too much, or those kinds of things are what I hear people say. And that's something also that kind of indicates that your nervous system is a bit dysregulated, because you can't even name like what's going on that's making you feel this way, but you're kind of always feeling stressed. So basically, it's that physical stress coming from the functioning of the autonomic nervous system. And then the idea of regulating this also means like moving through that stress and getting back to your baseline so that your parasympathetic nervous system can do the resting and digesting, right? So it's being able to do all of the functions. Doesn't mean that we're never going to get stressed again, that we're never going to get into that fight or flight mode. It's about coming back to baseline a little more quickly with a little bit less like, oh my God, that was crazy, right? Like a little bit less up and down and a little bit less intensity.
Oh, that is a really great explanation. Thank you for that. So in your intake form, you shared a pretty powerful and frightening statistic from the Surgeon General about parental stress. If you can share that statistic and then why you think modern parenting is so emotionally demanding, which leads to that nervous system dysregulation.
Yeah, totally. I was also kind of horrified reading this. So this is the former Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, and this was a report from 2024 called Parents Under Pressure. It is on his website if you want to read it. It's actually, I found it very validating in a lot of ways. And essentially, he said that according to their studies, 41% of parents say that most days they're so stressed that they can't function. And 48% say that most days their stress is completely overwhelming compared to people who are not parents, right? So this isn't just like, this is what modern day life is. This is like people who are parents are facing this level of stress. I mean, it's so interesting because in this report, there were a lot of reasons for parental stress. Like, what does the landscape look like? And I think those things are powerful and they're researched. But I was thinking about it sort of like in a personal level too, and talking to my friends and my clients. Parenting has become this like more than full-time job, right? And I think it always was, right? Because there's always the overnight, but it's almost like we're trying to overachieve at parenting in some of the ways that we're trying to overachieve at other things, right? Like it's super hands-on. It's like every single person is expected to know 10 different sensory activities for their baby. And they're supposed to know how to like do 6 different swaddles. And they're supposed to have, all the nicest like climbing equipment for motor development. And it just feels like, I think it's commercialism partially, like it runs, businesses for people to feel like they need to buy these things. But there's that aspect of it. There's the overinformation, the fact that social media is kind of putting all this information out there. And for somebody who doesn't have a background in early childhood development, it can be hard to know, like, what do I throw away and what is really reasonable. It's like everything you read says something different. It's very confusing. I mean, I think there's so many things. I'm curious what you think too, because I know your kids are a little bit older.
Yeah, I think I'm in an interesting place because I had my kids older. So my peers are more millennials, and I am a Gen X, a very proud Gen X. I'm a Gen X. And I had a conversation. My mom just moved nearby. She used to live 5 hours away. So now she's 20 minutes away. So she was over for dinner at the end of the night. And we did have a conversation about parenting and how kind of emphasizing what you're saying, like it's exhausting. And my kids are older, 11 and 13. And I remember researching everything, especially for my first, like all the
Yeah.
toys that came in, they had to be wooden, non-toxic. They had to be, sensory and Montessori approved. Like I
Yep.
really, my second, I have to say we didn't quite do the same thing, but, I really felt the need to do the best job I could to really show up, researched, evidence-based, and give it my all. And I felt competitive with myself. I'll admit I felt a little competitive with others. Like I really felt like I had to be hands-on, and I'm still pretty hands-on, not as much, but my mom was like, oh, no, we didn't do that. And I'm like, oh, I know. Like right now in our mornings, we get my kids out, like we wake them up. My husband and I wake them up, getting breakfast, we're getting lunch, we're getting them at the door, making sure like, they have to pack their own bags. And I'm like, do you have your bag as you walk out the door? And my mom reminded me that she never came down and she just left some money on the table and I got myself out the door.
Wow.
And I think like there's a happy medium. And I think
Yes.
that we often feel the need to really be present and support our kids when I think there could be a little less support. That could just be me wanting to really still always try my best. But there is something I think scrappy about letting them figure a little more out on their own.
Totally.
So I think it's the over information, the maybe internal, external competitiveness that we feel, the deep desire, not that I don't think my parents wanted us to succeed, but the deep desire to feel that we need to curate things and really guide them to this shiny, happy future. So that's my take on it. And that's why when I read this report and I listened to a lot of podcasts about the past Surgeon General's statistics, I related to that. I'm like, oh, we fall into this. It can be very overwhelming.
Totally. I agree with you. That's really insightful. And I also think like what you mentioned about sort of the independence that you might have had in your childhood of like, I left some money on the table and you just went. There is a real absence of that type of independence nowadays. And like there's a psychologist, his name's Peter Gray. He wrote this book, Free to Learn. He also is on Substack. He has some really interesting stuff, but he kind of talks about like some of the differences in childhood independence in this generation of kids that's being raised up now. And there really just is a lot less of it, like between schools and organized activities for kids outside of school. And, I think it goes both ways. Like kids aren't used to that independence. So maybe they also are a little bit more reliant on parents at times, right? When we say like, oh, give your child independent play, and a parent might be like, what are you even talking about? My kid won't let me put them down, right? Like, honestly, that was my first daughter. Like, she really loved to be held. And so for like, probably until she turned 3, we basically like carried her around all the time. And it can be tricky based on your child's temperament and
Yes.
et cetera.
Yeah.
But starting to build like a little bit more independence around their play can free up some time, and feeling like you don't need to like schedule all the activities or do all the mommy and me classes. Like they're great. But I agree with you. Like there's something in between. There's a happy medium between I left money on the table and you just went versus like,
I
I'm
look
with
forward
you
to that day, actually. I look forward to the day where I'm like, go out.
Totally.
I mean, I even look at the things like right now, we live in walking distance to our little town center, and my kids at this age can walk in. Now, granted, I also know that I can track them, where they are. And I remember as a kid jumping on my bike and being gone for hours.
Yeah.
And my parents had no clue where I was, which I kind of like. All right, I'm going to pull us back.
Yeah, totally.
I'm going to pull us back. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I'd love to learn more about the framework that you call the domains of family wellness. All right, we'll take a break. We'll be right back.
Every who down in Who Newville liked the holidays a ton, but where to get great prices on gifts, they had no idea. None. They searched and they searched for great gifts under $25. Gifts for spouses and friends and even their toddlers. When suddenly one who shouted, Walmart has what you want, knowing they have Lego, Tree Hut, and low prices to flaunt. So they enjoy the holiday season as who's often do. Cheering and shouting, Walmart has incredible gifts. Who knew? Find gifts they'll love under $25 at Walmart.
How do you top your love for your cat? With a cascade of decadent, savory gravy over a mouth-watering mousse pâté. Fancy Feast gems. 2 gourmet pâtés in one convenient pack. Simply peel and plate to reveal a pyramid shape that makes eating delightful and pamper her with an experience as extraordinary as she is. Turn the everyday into the extraordinary with Fancy Feast gems.
Okay, we are back. So I'd love to learn more about the framework, the domains of family wellness. Can you tell me more about the 9 areas you help parents assess and optimize?
Yes, I would love to. So essentially, these are what I kind of gathered together from my work in schools, my work with clients who are parents, and also my own experience as a parent. So there are 9 domains of family wellness. They include identity, philosophy, and partnership, physical wellness, support, mental wellness, knowledge, parent-child relationship, and logistics. And so it kind of seems like a lot, but when I show this to clients, they're often like, oh my God, I've never thought about all these things and how important they are and how interconnected they are, right? So what I essentially use the domains of family wellness for is to help people kind of see like how things are so interconnected in terms of where they might be feeling their source of stress in the moment, right? So if somebody is telling me, for example, like they are just super stressed, they're overwhelmed, every day is tricky, I might look at this and be like, okay, where does it feel like it's tricky? And it's funny, you'd be surprised how many people say, oh, it's just this little thing. And the little thing is like, my baby won't take a bottle, or
That's a big thing.
exactly. Right. And some of those things have to do with like just that logistics piece, right? Like they know what they want to do. They know how they want to parent, but then logistically, like their baby won't take a bottle, so they can't leave the house. Right. And certain things like that, right? Even the support piece of like, do they have a family member that lives nearby that can help babysit so that they can have a date night with their partner? Things like that. So oftentimes people are in these early parenthood years. I generally work with people in the first like 0 to 5 years of parenting. Sometimes they have kids that are a little bit older, but in these first 5 years specifically, like everything's changing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your identity is new. Your relationship has made a huge shift, and you have this new, more than full-time job. And so it is helpful to look at what it is that could potentially be shifted, altered, optimized in order to relieve stress across the whole dynamic. So another example is like physical wellness. When I had my first daughter, I actually had a C-section, and I had some horrible back pain like about a year after I had my daughter. And I hadn't gone to physical therapy or anything at that time. But it was hard for me. It was genuinely hard for me to like spend the whole day with her because there was so much lifting and there was so much like getting up and down off the floor. And if we went on an outing, God forbid, like to the fireworks or something, and I had to bring an extra bag, like my back was killing me, right? And so that physical wellness piece, I tend to ask like, how's your body helping or hurting you day to day? Like my back was hurting and it was making me not enjoy being a mom. I was like, wait, this is terrible. I can't do anything fun. I'm always exhausted. I'm always in pain, right? It was making it so that I felt kind of unsteady with my relationship with my child of like, am I a fun mom? Maybe I'm not a fun mom because I can't play with you, right? And all of that, right? So oftentimes there's a little piece. And for me, that ended up being, I had to go to physical therapy and do some serious core work to recover from my C-section. And I didn't know that that's the thing I had to do to totally change my experience of motherhood and be like, oh, I am good at this job. I do love doing this. It was just because my back was hurting that I was so stressed.
Oh, I really appreciate that. And thank you for sharing that. And I do love the idea of like really pinpointing that root, because I can imagine that it could just feel all overwhelming. But if you can pinpoint it, then you can start to make some changes. And like you said, treating those symptoms. So how does clarifying one's parenting values and philosophies support the nervous system regulation?
Yeah, that's a great question. That comes into the philosophy kind of area of the domains of family wellness, which is essentially that the way I see it, there are a million little decisions every day as a parent. Like, what cup am I going to give my kid? And how am I going to handle it if they won't take it? And how am I going to get them to nap? And how am I going to feed them? And, there's so many decisions, especially with, as we were talking about earlier, this super hands-on moment in parenting that we're having. And if we're kind of with every single decision, like wrestling with
We get
what
that
the right
decision
thing,
burnout.
exactly. When we're like, here's another one. How do I approach this? What do I do? We're like reinventing the wheel. It keeps us in this like stress, this state of constant stress. Our nervous system is activated, right? If we can come up with sort of a philosophy or like even a job description of like, what do I believe that my job as a parent is, right? Then every time we're making one of those decisions, we can compare it back to that that philosophy of like, okay, is this aligned with what I believe? If it is, we can feel safe, secure, confident, clear, right? Like that just lets us kind of move through those little decisions with a little bit more clarity so that we don't have to get activated in our nervous system when those decisions come up, right? And so I can give another like personal example of that, which is before my daughter was born, my first daughter, my husband and I we piloted this and we came up with a funny acronym because we felt like everything we were learning about was in these funny acronyms. And so we came up with this acronym that's kind of one of our guiding parenting philosophies, which is SLIMS. Is my child feeling safe, loved? Are they building independence? And are we maintaining our sanity? That is our current working parenting philosophy. And so every single time with our new baby, when we were like, oh my gosh, like, somebody's coming over, should we let them hold her? We would kind of be like, okay, she's this old, like we read this about the germ exposure, they have their vaccines, right? We would kind of be like, okay, you know what? It's going to help us maintain sanity to let them hold her. And she's going to be loved by them and she's probably going to be safe. Let's just let it go. Let them hold her and we'll take a nap. Right. So we kind of use this and then it becomes second nature of like, you kind of know what's aligned with your framework rather than reinventing the wheel every time.
So what would you say are some of the biggest misconceptions you hear about emotional regulation or stress management from parents? Because I can imagine there's so many misunderstandings and myths and misconceptions. What do you think?
Yeah, this is a really good question. I think like, there's so many based on kind of like what sphere, what kind of social media you're following, like what kind of sphere you're in. But I hear a few different things. One of the things is sort of like this idea of exercise being the answer, right? So exercise, I will never advocate against it. It's super good for you. You shouldn't stop. But I feel like I do meet with a lot of clients who kind of have this idea of like, oh, like I go for my run, I get my endorphins, like I'm good, or I get my runner's high. And in actuality, sometimes those folks never slow down. And they haven't, like, they don't do a cool down. They don't stretch. Like they don't necessarily breathe. Right. And that's fine. Like, we're busy. Like parents are so busy. It's hard to fit in that cool down. But I think that sometimes those folks who really prioritize exercise only, and they'll never do like a breathing exercise or, a quick like meditation or a yoga class or something like that, might be missing out on some of the like getting their body to really come back to baseline, especially if they're always stressed. I think, this is with the caveat of like, if you feel great and you're running every day and you feel awesome, keep doing it. But if you're running every day and you're like, exercise is supposed to improve my mood, but I'm always stressed, it might be worth thinking about like, do I breathe? Do I like slow down ever? Do I ever use my break in my day to take like a little bit of a rest or reset rather than always taking that high intensity exercise? I think the same thing goes with like just sort of staying busy, like people who have the idea of, I keep busy so that because I don't want to like pause or take a break because it's hard to get started again, or because then I realize how stressed I've been all along and I don't want to look at that, right? Like staying busy
it's an avoidance.
Yeah, to some extent, right? Like not always, but sometimes if you notice,
be an avoidance,
exactly. And I hear this from parents sometimes if they do get like a weekend away or even like a date night, they might be like, I was kind of thinking about my kid and checking the baby monitor the whole time. And I think that shows like, okay, if that's what happens for you when you take a break, there might need to be some more regular breaks so that you can practice coming back to baseline, taking those breaths. Everything is safe. Like your baby is okay. You're okay. Because if we just stay busy all the time, we never give our nervous system the chance to come back to that baseline and take that break and that rest.
I like that. I am kind of on both. Like I exercise in the morning and then I have to run up to help with the kids stuff and then cool down. But I do one thing that I think might be helpful for listeners. I call it my breathing snacks. That's just what I call it in my brain. And when I'm feeling like I've been sitting at my desk, because sometimes I'll sit there for like 2.5 hours straight and not even realize I've been so zoned in. And then I get up, I just walk around a little bit, and then I'll lay down. And I usually do this with a foam roller because the psoas muscle when we sit gets really tight, but that's also part of our nervous system that when we're feeling that fight or flight, the psoas reacts. And so I will do a passive psoas release while doing some pranayama. So it's my little breathing snack. And it's only maybe 5 minutes. So it's not like a full meal. It's not like half an hour. It's my snack. So it just gets me out of my chair. It gets me opening parts of my body that, particularly my psoas, that's tight. And it gets me laying down and for me, that just quiets my mind. So I hope that helps the community, but it's one of my little hacks. Oh, speaking of hacks, let's talk about, do you have any hacks, or are there any nervous system hacks or advice that you think are overhyped or misunderstood in the wellness space? Because I feel like everyone has something that may be a little bit too much.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, first of all, I love your breathing snacks. That is amazing. Yes, I love it. And I think that that's just good to remember. Like the resetting really doesn't have to be long. It's actually more effective. And like a 5-minute like breathing exercise is more effective than like a 5-minute run, right? So even though there's something to be said about like doing some exercise every day, I can see why somebody who really wants to get their heart rate up and wants to be sweating, like they want more than 5 minutes. But with breathing, you don't need more than 5 minutes. That's really all you need to make it really effective. So I love that. So I think actually that's a good like lead into this next question. One is that like in terms of something being misunderstood, the idea that like you have to, in order to practice breath work or mindfulness, you have to like meditate for 40 minutes a day and wake up at 4 a.m. Like that is not it at all. When I worked at the trauma program, I knew that what I was taking in there, and I was also pregnant with my second daughter, I was really intentional about the fact that I knew that I was taking in some really heavy stuff being there. And I knew that it was going to affect my baby and my nervous system if I didn't do something about it. And so every day when I left work, I would sit in my car for 5 minutes and just do a 5-minute meditation. And I would just go on YouTube and look up a 5-minute meditation. It was nothing fancy. I didn't have any of the apps, although some of them are great. At the time, I didn't have any of them. I just did a basic 5-minute meditation on YouTube and it was super helpful. So meditation does not have to be for 40 minutes. I think, again, and it's all like an ongoing practice, just like yoga, right? And like some days on your mat, you're like ready to soar and hop and fly and float and bind and all of that. And other days you're kind of like, I'm going to be in Shavasana for the next 45 minutes. Thanks. And so that's something I love about some of the nervous system regulating techniques like yoga, like mindfulness, like breath work. It's what you need on that day. And there's no need for it to be anything different than that or anything other. I think there are some things that are really hyped right now, like things like cold plunges, right? And like saunas and even like hot yoga, right? Like where it's like really intense. These things are cool. I think that there's a place for them, but that's not what it has to be every time in order to really like give you that benefit of, regulating your nervous system. And again, even if you do those things, if you do something like a cold plunge or like a sauna or even hot yoga, and you're essentially putting your body under some stress. And the idea is that you would be using the breath to regulate and learn, kind of use that as to like train the vagus nerve and learn how to like regulate even when things are intense. And so those things can really help regulate the nervous system. But if you're not going into it with that intentionality, it is kind of not worth it, right? In my opinion, it's like, if you're just going to be miserable the whole time and like, oh my God, this water's so cold, I can't do it, right? Like that's not really regulating to the nervous system. That's really more just like uncomfortable for the body. And I think it's similar in birth, like we talk about, using the breath and using some hypnobirthing techniques maybe to regulate and kind of move through the pain, move through contractions, etc. And nobody would like go do childbirth just for fun, really. And if you did that, like you would be trying to breathe your way through it, right? So I would say like don't get in a cold plunge or in a hot yoga class if you're going to be miserable and not use the breath and not really use it to regulate.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, we're going to take another break. When we come back, what is one final tip or piece of advice you'd like to offer new and expectant parents? So think about that. We'll be right back.
Abercrombie Kids knows how to make outfitting easy. Mix and match sets are their ultimate outfit hack for fall. Their sweatshirts and sweatpants are super cozy, and they always have the cutest colors and patterns. Shop fall's easiest outfit at Abercrombie Kids in the app, online, and in stores.
We're back. All right. So as we wrap up, what is one final tip or piece of advice you'd like to offer new and expectant parents?
I love this question. I always get so much from the guests on your podcast that share. So I hope that this is helpful. Thinking about becoming a parent, it's such a huge, huge life change and so beautiful and so hard. And something that I really feel strongly about is that you still get to be yourself as a parent. And in fact, like the absolute best thing that you can do for your kid is to be your whole self and be like the best version of yourself, right? And so I think sometimes when people are preparing to welcome a new baby, they're thinking all about the ways to prepare their house for the baby, right? To prepare like getting all of the supplies that they need and getting all of the toys and researching all of the latest sleep techniques and all of that. And that stuff is really great and important. But I think that sometimes we forget about the huge change that we're going to go through and our relationship as well. And I would just like to encourage new parents to sort of do some self-reflection and remember how important it is to like come, be yourself, like come back to yourself. If there's something that you love to do, like, maybe set yourself a date up on the calendar, like 2 months after your due date and say like, I'm going to pick up a paintbrush on this day for 30 minutes because that's what I love to do. Right. Or I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to, make a special cup of tea. Like, don't let go of all the things that you enjoy that make you, because it's actually not going to make you any better for your kid. Doing all these things and, taking time for yourself. I think this is overhyped in some ways, but it bears repeating, which is just that like making time for yourself and allowing yourself to be a whole person as a parent is going to allow you to bring more joy to parenting, have a better relationship with your kid down the road even too.
I love that answer. I think that's going to serve the parent to still feed who they are, as well as for the child to see, this is my parent. They have their quirkinesses too, and see the fun, like what for the good or bad. I'm
Totally.
always singing musical theater. It's on my Pandora. I'm singing, I'm dancing around the kitchen all the time. They're in the car with me.
I love it.
To my son's great dismay, he knows a lot of musical theater, a lot of show tunes.
Amazing.
And I kind of love that he's like, oh, that's from Hamilton. I'm like, yes, it is.
Yes.
I appreciate that my kids then see they have the permission to embrace their fun and quirkiness. It doesn't have, we don't have to be so buttoned up. So I
100%.
love that advice. So thank you. So where can people find your work?
So right now you can find me on my website. I have a monthly newsletter. You can sign up at thefamilywellct.com/dipintothewell. And then my Substack is just at thefamilywell, no spaces. I'm on Substack as well.
Oh, this is wonderful. I'll make sure that's all in our show notes. Kat, I had so much fun chatting with you. Thank you.
Thank you. This was awesome, Deb. Take care.
This has been an episode of Yoga, Birth, Babies, produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. You can catch us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Periscope. I'm Deb Flaschenberg. Thanks for listening.